So starting off with the first concept when it comes to being the diff author, and this is the most important one in my opinion. If you're gonna forget everything in this presentation except for one thing, make this the one thing that you remember. And if you're a earlier in career engineer, 2 years of experience or less, this is something that you need to start championing now if you haven't already. Because when you're more junior, your priority is to just get as good and proficient at writing code as much as possible. And if you really champion this ideal here, that process of writing code, or rather having it go smoothly through code review after it's been written and published, is going to go way smoother. And then you're going to build so much more like trust and social capital if you really champion this idea, and your team will love you for it. So we've talked about this before. Honestly, I think a lot of being a good, not just a good software engineer, but just like a good employee, a good teammate, a good person in general, is having very strong empathy. And Rahul and I have talked about this a lot before, like writing a good resume, or doing an interview, or being a tech lead. Being able to put yourself in the shoes of another person is so important. And it is absolutely no different when it comes to code review. So if you're writing a diff, the thing that you should constantly be thinking is, when I publish this diff for review, how can I make it as good an experience as possible for all the people who choose to take the time out of their day to review my diff? How do you have this very deep and understanding empathy for all the people who read your code? And once you have this idea essentially burned into your brain, and you apply it to every single diff you write and then put out for diff review, you're going to have some much easier time going through review, because trust me, your reviews are going to go a lot faster. You're going to get a lot of green checks on the first time. And as with like all these cases of empathy, it's very important for you to understand the struggle in particular that the people on the other side of the fence are going through for you. So when it comes to diff review in particular, it varies based on culture. But from my experience, a lot of the reviews, like diff reviews that people have, are not forced. Like usually in a healthy engineering org, when you put out a diff, there's going to be at least 2, 3, maybe 5, 10 people who can review it. So it's not like anyone is on the hook specifically for reviewing your diff. So when a person takes the time to review your diff, they're essentially making a conscious choice, is hey, I choose to spend this time for this person, even though I am not forced to. So they're taking time out of their day to unblock you. And you should just be very grateful for that, because in the end, the most valuable resource is time. And when someone chooses to review your diff, they're giving you their time to essentially empower you to unblock you, so you can land your code in production and ship whatever cool feature you're trying to ship. And another thing that's important to remember as well is that and this definitely applies to me, is writing code is awesome. Engineers generally prefer writing code to reading code. Well, that might change once you become very senior, but it's just the allure and amazingness of writing code, it usually doesn't go away, especially if you're being a software engineer for the right reasons. So a lot of the times, people will be, and other software engineers will be writing their own thing. They'll be in the zone, building their own feature, writing their own code. And then when you put out a diff for review, they have to context switch away. They have to get out of the zone of their zone, writing their own thing to review their diff a lot of times. So they're incurring an extra cost by context switching a lot of times to review your diff. So that's something important to remember as well. And tactically, a big reason why you want to do this is you're eventually going to be on both sides of the fence. there are very, very few engineers who will just write a bunch of code and never review code. And I think that's actually if a lot of those engineers exist in your org where they don't review anyone else's diffs and they only put out diffs of their own and try to land their own impact, I think that's unhealthy, because that's honestly kind of selfish. Because it's you're only kind of spending your time on the shiny thing of landing code, as opposed to reading other people's code. So you will eventually review other people's code. Generally what I've seen happen is, for the first year, 6 months to a year of a junior engineer's career, they won't review a lot of code. But as they grow to the mid-level and then senior level, their manager, their tech lead will push them to review more code. And that's how they kind of expand their scope and refine their abilities. And when you're the reviewer, you want the code to the code that you review to have high empathy for you, right? You don't want to be gobsmacked with like some 5,000 line diff with like no diff summary and no test plan, and then just be like, well, what the heck? How am I? What am I supposed to do with this, right? You want the diffs that come to you to be high quality, easy to read, easy to understand, and just like immediately ready for a high quality discussion. Golden rule, do what you want others to do, right? Set the example yourself. So yeah, if you're gonna remember just one thing from this presentation, choose this one.